The 122TM is the Tier 8 Chinese medium tank that will be entering the game fairly shortly, most likely for the Chinese New Year. Now, judging that this vehicle is coming out in the Chinese New Year, that means that this tank is not going to have enough time for testing. Today is the 15th of January, and the Chinese New Year is in less than 30 days. There's no way they could fully test this tank in 30 days and release it into the public. So, in my guess is that the 122TM will be released on Chinese New Year, or at least the weeks of that New Year. And these statistics that I'm going to be showing you now are the finalized statistics of the tank. I could be wrong, and it's possible that Wargaming is going to postpone the release of this vehicle and just make the Stayer the Chinese New Year tank, but I don't know why they do that because it's not Chinese. So yeah, this would be my best guess for all of you. So let's start off with the statistics of this vehicle. As I said, they are not finalized, but they're pretty damn well known that they might be final. So these are here, the statistics of running it with calibrated shells, and this is it with gun rammer. I'm going to be talking about the Cali because I like penetration, so if you would like to see what it looks like with the rammer, literally just look off to the side. It has 1,537 hit points, which is pretty similar to the Boss Chatillon Barask, and it's a lot more than the average Tier 8 medium tank, so you'll easily be able to chunk shells like a beast. The armor profile, we'll take a look at that in a bit. All I will say is that the upper plate is 125 millimeters thick, and that doesn't sound like much on paper until you realize that the T-54's upper plate is 120. So if it has the same angle as a T-54, yeah, that's going to be one strong armor profile. It has 290 meters of view range, which is pretty average for a Tier 8 medium, and the camouflage is pretty average as well for a Tier 8 medium, so nothing fantastic on those regards. What I can say is very nice is the damage per minute. When we take a look at DPM of vehicles like the T-34-3, the T-34-2, or the STG Guard, they sit at around 1,600, 1,700 DPM if you are running calibrated shells. This vehicle sits at 1,893 damage per minute, and that means if you're running provisions, you can probably get it a bit higher. That's a lot of DPM when you think about it, way more than the average 122mm Tier 8 medium. This tank, in fact, will have very similar DPM to a Chimera, except this thing will actually have armor and some very good hull-down capabilities. Its penetration on the standard is quite nice at 213, and the premium is 297, which is absolutely fantastic. Obviously, you're going to butter through everything. It has 400 damage per shot, which is great. It's got 340 on the heat and 500 on the HE, so it's your average Russian 122, as it says in the title, 122. So that's great. Aiming time, however, is not fantastic. It's a 3.9 second aiming time. So this might be one of the first Chinese vehicles that does not have the fastest aiming time compared to the, the STG Guard, the T-34-3. That might be one of the big balancing factors. Another one, dispersion. Now, I will point out that the dispersion on this vehicle is actually quite good when you compare it to a vehicle like the T-34-3 that sits at 0.38. This is 0.353. That's way better. So again, this gun is quite accurate for what it is and what it has going for it. Gun depression is 7 degrees, also way better than the 34-3 and the 34-2 and the STG Guard. Yeah, it's starting to look like this thing's kind of got everything going for it, doesn't it? So, very good on all of those statistics there, especially judging that it's got great pen. Most of these high alpha tanks suffer on their penetration with their standard ammo, STG Guard, T-34-3, T-34-2. This vehicle doesn't. That's great. When we take a look at the mobility, it goes 45, which is about 10 slower than most of the other ones. The STG Guard can go 50. I think the 34-3 can even go 56. So, it is a bit slower, but its power to weight is still very nice at 17.3, and that means it can average a speed of 31 kilometers per hour. Its turret is 36 degrees a second, and the hull is 35. It's not the fastest of vehicles on traverse speed, I will tell you that now. I mean, sure, 70 degrees a second is still quite quick if you add both together, and you're not going to have to worry about being flanked by light tanks like an SP-1C or, Dracula's, but it is still going to feel a little bit cumbersome when you compare it to other Tier 8 vehicles that can go upwards of 60, 70 degrees of traverse a second like the STG Guard. Terrain crossing capacity is pretty good though, so not too bad on that aspect. This is what the vehicle looks like, and as I said, I think it looks amazing. It looks like you got a 113 to have a child with a T-34-3. I mean, it looks amazing. What I will say is, while that upper plate is 125 thick, it is a little bit steeper than a T-54, so it's not the same thickness as a T-54 on that upper plate, but let's take a look at the armor, because that's probably what a lot of you would like to see. This is the tank with a T-95E2 aiming at the upper plate, so that's about 187 millimeters of pen if you're running Cali on it, which we were in this picture. So 180 millimeters physically cannot penetrate the upper plate of this vehicle, can't penetrate the turret, and even the cupolas are quite red. If we are using it hull down, I mean, just look at that armor profile. That is actually insane. And by the way, that is with using heat shells, 297 millimeters of heat penetration, and that is what the vehicle looks like hull down. This is what it looks like on flat ground if you're using that heat. So yeah, the upper plate, very easy penetration. Turret cheeks are quite weak, but they're still quite strong as well. I mean, that is 300 millimeters of heat pen, so yeah, these turret cheeks are probably about 230, 240 thick, and when you're hull down, they're going to be even way harder to penetrate. So very strong in that regard. Another thing that is very, very sneaky about this vehicle is the spaced armor. You'll notice that here, this vehicle is completely covered in spaced armor on the sides here, and as well on the side skirts. If we take a look at the side of the vehicle, if I can find a picture scrolling, this is all spaced, obviously, but so is this whole thing. The whole sides of this vehicle are spaced. So even though the sides of this tank are 70 millimeters thick, you're not going to be able to penetrate them with any high explosive ammunition. So RHM, ISU, get your HU away because it's going to be a waste of your time. This vehicle has 7 degrees of gun depression, which makes vehicles like the 34-3 seem kind of useless. And honestly, I don't blame it. I mean, if you think about it, this takes all the disadvantages of a 34-3, and it throws them out of the window. Poor DPM out of the window. Poor standard penetration out, and it has the same heat pen. The only disadvantage, it seems, is that this vehicle has a bit worse of an aiming time than the 34-3, because its dispersion is better. So, yeah, this is a vehicle that scares me a lot. I can tell you already that this tank might be stronger than the Chimera. Now, why is that? Well, the Chimera sacrifices everything for the Alpha. It has 440 damage a shot, and if I'm not mistaken, it has basically the same DPM as this vehicle. In fact, we can find out really quickly. We'll just make our way over to Blitz hangar, and let's go get up the Chimera, because if I'm really not mistaken here, the Chimera has about 2,000 DPM. As you can see, 2,023. That means if you're running calibrated, it's 1881. And what we just saw all the way up here, just scrolling, it's 1893. This is more DPM than a Chimera. But the difference is the Chimera sacrifices everything, so it can have that main penetration and damage per shot of 440. But the thing is that if the Chimera does all that, it doesn't have any turret armor. I mean, the turret is 203 thick. You can see it right here. So if your turret's only 203 thick, even when you're hull down, if your turret is upwards of 206, and now we have a vehicle that's going to have a turret that's basically impervious to enemy shells at tier 8, especially like a Chimera, yeah, it honestly might just be a better Chimera. I mean, sure, the upper plate on this vehicle's nice. You know, this is 180. That's about 170, but that's not much when you compare it to what the 122 TM is going to be. So, yeah, this is a vehicle that scares me a lot. I think it looks amazing, and that's one reason why I'm very excited for it to come into the game. But I'm also very nervous about this vehicle not entering testing, because if it doesn't, oh boy, that's all I'm going to say. Hopefully you enjoyed today's video, and I'll be seeing you in the next one. Let me know what you guys think about this vehicle in the comments down below. Bye-bye.